that button. There we go.
There we go. We're
Yeah.
recording. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Simon. So, as Simon mentioned, I'm Dave Johnson and I'm the head of legal for the PayStream group. And we offer a number of services across our portfolio. We're primarily known for offering our umbrella service in the UK. And as Simon mentioned, we are currently the biggest in terms of the numbers of contractors that we're servicing there. And we do offer CIS as well. We do accountancy service. We offer screening as well for pre-employment checks and various checks around temporary recruitment. And we also offer some back office software through our TIFO sister brand as well. We've just gone international fairly recently. So primarily working in Ireland and the States, but we are working further afield now as well.
Okay, and thank you for that. And I'm really pleased to invite some real great friends and members of team, Jeanette Barracliff and Rob Latimer from Meridian, who probably our biggest member and a long-standing member. I can't remember how long you've been involved, Jeanette, but certainly before my time. And I'm a newbie. I joined in 2012. I think you folks were well before that, weren't you?
Yeah, well before that. Maybe, I don't know, over 20 years. I don't know how long it's been
Yeah.
going, but we weren't there at the beginning, but certainly not long afterwards.
Yes, and one of the things that you bring to the party for this event is you've been in high volume temp and contract for many years as part of the portfolio that you offer your clients, and that's given you resilience in some roller coaster times, 2008. 2020, etc., etc. And you invited Rob sensibly because he's running a big division of that. So just give us an overview on Meridian for those that we've got quite a few new members, Meridian, who might not know who more about you guys. So
Okay.
little,
So I'm the finance director at Meridian, hence why you said I sensibly, whether it was sensibly invited Rob or not, we'll find out, won't we? But um, I don't actually do the recruitment work, which is what this session's about. Is converting perm clients to temp clients. Meridian specialises in four main sectors. Built environment is one of them, which Rob heads up. Industrial's our largest sector. We also do healthcare and professional and commercial and professional. Um, we turn over around 68 million. We should do this year. Split between temp and perm. We've got just over 100 consultants, and we've been going since 1989. We did a management buyout in 2021, so the business is fully owned by people like myself and Rob, Derek, who you know well,
mhm.
and anyone and other people that work within the business. We've got no external shareholders in the business anymore. That's a quick canter through, I guess, of Meridian and what we do. We've got offices across the UK. Um, so yeah, have I missed anything out, Simon?
I don't think so. And that's a really good overview. And thank you very much. And Rob, if you could unmute and just tell us about your division and I think challenges and opportunities. Just a quick overview. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So I head up Meridian's Built Environment division. We are on course to turn over about 14 million, I think, this year. Historically, it's been blue collar temp. I have, since taking the division over a few years ago, tried to diversify into more white collar and technical and into some perm offerings as well. So I've got I guess in contrast to today's topic, Simon, I've got a temp business that I've been building perm alongside, but that cross selling is the same, and particularly when you've got volatile markets like this, it's been a godsend.
No, that's exactly what we want to try and create into for ideas. People are facing challenges now, and that type of solution-led focus would be really helpful. So I think, Dave, you can kick off with some slides, and I think what you're going to do is, as you rightfully said, you've got some stuff on here. Which is about recruitment as well as support, but so we're going to bring Rob in and potentially Jeanette now and again, aren't we, to just comment on some of the challenges and thoughts on each slide. So take it away, please, sir.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Simon. Yeah, as Simon just mentioned, I am not a recruiter, so I'm glad that we approached Meridian on this and that they were willing to take part in it for us. They'll be able to talk to you a lot better about recruitment specifically, but what I will be able to go into it in a little bit more detail as we rattle through these slides is, how your choice of umbrella partner can help support you. If this is a revenue stream that you think, is an opportunity that you can take advantage of. So today we're specifically talking about how you can build out a temp desk and unlock that recurring revenue. So today we'll be covering what the opportunity is, and how you're a lot closer than you think. You don't need to necessarily go out and find new clients. You can set this up from working from the existing clients that you have. We'll go into a little bit more detail on that. We'll talk you through some concrete steps to actually launching a temp desk as well, like actionable takeaways that you can take away and work on in the first 4 weeks following this webinar. We'll talk a little bit about where agencies go wrong, where risks sit, how you should be thinking about those risks and risk allocation, etc. And then Meridian as well will be talking a little bit about a case study from doing this themselves. They've done this very successfully. So I'm sure Rob and Gillette will have a little bit to say on that bit, and then we'll talk about your first 30 days. Okay, so the big question, why are more perm agencies adding temp? So I think we all know the economic situation that we're in. We know that the market's been pretty stagnant for the last 3 years, 4 years. We've been hearing some positive things from the start of this year, some sort of green shoots in certain sectors and whatnot, but generally we know it's quite a suppressed market. There's a lot of market volatility at the minute if you look further afield in the UK in terms of global affairs and whatnot, and all of these things feed in to what's happening in our particular space. And we know that perm cycles have slowed down somewhat because of these things, and that's leading to cash flow pressure. And what is it that clients are really looking for? They're demanding flexibility. Rob, have you got anything you want to add on that one?
No, I think you're covering it, to be perfectly honest, Dave. There's certainly what the frustrations of the perm market can be eased with temp margin running alongside it. There's no doubt about that. I think some of your slides will come on to it, but that flexibility side of it, a lot of the time clients don't realise that that's an answer for them. So it's not always the case of clients demanding flexibility. It's clients not realising there's a flexible option that gives them an alternative.
So they don't always know what they don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
But maybe a bit of an education point as well, for clients. Okay, well let's flesh out the opportunity a little bit more then. So what does adding temp to your business, what does that look like? Well, as you know, when you're placing permanent candidates, you get a one-off fee. I suppose the beauty of placing temps is that you have that recurring revenue, whether that's weekly or monthly. And obviously, the more contractors you can place, the better. It can lead to stronger client relationships because, you're already offering a great service on the perm side, but we know that that's a bit of a suppressed market at the moment. And we know increasingly that clients, agencies are looking for, partners that can offer more than one service. Instead of partnering with lots of different providers, if you're able to offer a different service there and solve a problem for them, then that can help make that client relationship stronger for you. It can lead to better candidate retention as well. And ultimately, it makes you less reliant on one particular revenue stream, and it just makes your business model a little bit more resilient. So what does it look like financially in a really, really simple way of looking at it? We've just mentioned, so perm, it is a one-off fee, whereas, with the placing temps, you've got that ongoing margin per worker. And even if you just place one contractor, it's reoccurring revenue every single week. And I'm rattling through these slides because we've got a fair few, and we will share them afterwards. I want to make sure.
Dave, just to jump in, sorry, to cut your flow. Just going back to the client relationships and how it can strengthen them, that's probably the most important factor alongside the financial reasons for doing it, the stability of margin. the difference it makes to that relationship when you've got absolute exposure and you're supplying temp alongside perm. One of the real benefits that's just almost secondary is you have an obligation to speak to that client weekly, and they have an obligation to speak to you, or you can form it as an obligation where you have a weekly catch up on how the temp's going on and around the temp's payroll. So a really good client relationship, you can ring them every day, get that. But actually what this does is start to bring in even more consistency of contact with that client base. Sorry, David, just thought I'd throw that.
No, and I think that's a really good point, actually. I mean, as you mentioned there, it gives you that regular touch point, doesn't it? There's a reason to pick up the phone. There's a reason to engage.
Yeah.
Can I just add one point that with my old recruitment hat on at Principal People, when we were placing perm people, and we were 100% perm when I bought the business, when we were placing perm people that were management, and they a lot of those managers were on 3-month notice periods. We started a temp contract division, and we would whenever there was a 3-month notice period or a role on perm, we'd always say to the client, how urgent is it that you have someone fill in this space? Because a lot of the good candidates that we have that we're going to be talking to will be committed to 3 months. The process may make 2 months. You're not going to have a health and safety manager for 5 months. And that's if we tick all the boxes and we get all this running fast. Can we get you someone now to fill that gap? Because you may be without someone for 5 months. And 1 in 3 of the clients on those 3-month notice jobs said yes, please. So we started to build a pipeline of consistent revenue prior to getting the perm fee paid. So it was a huge benefit to us, and it wasn't my initiative. It was the guy that headed up, and two guys working together on contract and the perm desk, saying we could make money out of this and share. So that, I think, really helps. There's real synergy in that, in a wider offering of service, and I agree with Rob as well. You can. There's more reason to have engagement with the client when you've got temporary or contract staff there, just to have constant. And at the end of the conversation, or even a face-to-face meeting, you can ask what else is happening in the business, and that opens doors, doesn't it? Definitely.
The other thing I would, sorry, the other thing I would just add on before Dave moves on to his slides, and I know we've got a lot of slides, Dave, is when you mentioned about recurring revenue, it improves the value of the business. So recruitment businesses that have got temp desks are valued, rightly or wrongly, they're valued more than a pure perm desk recruiter. So there's another reason there why you would maybe want to go in. I mean, it's got a lot of challenges, as we'll come on to, but there's another reason there why you would want to expand into temp.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. And I suppose building from that, the first point on this slide is, we talk about how you're a lot closer than you think. You don't need to start from scratch, and you can build on those relationships. Simon, Rob, Jeanette have just mentioned. You've already got the clients. You don't need to go out and find new clients. That can come further down the line, but you've already got the clients there. They have problems that they're looking for solutions for. You've already got the candidates as well, and you've already got the market knowledge. You already know your sectors inside out. So those 3 things together, it makes it a lot easier to build out that temp desk. You're not starting a new business. You've already got a lot of the pieces that you need of the puzzle. They're already there for you to build from.
Yeah, I think, Dave, that I'll come on to it briefly when you get to the Meridian slide. That cross-selling is far closer than you realise, and I'm saying that is a direct experience of we are cross-selling more from a temp business into perm, but the reality is the process is the same. The results are going to be comparable, and I've got 8 clients in the last 7-8 months that we've successfully done that cross-selling from temp into perm or perm into temp. We've had long-term clients in there, long-term targets, in there that have been converted because we've been able to offer one or the other. And had we only been able to do one, it probably would have closed us off or just not allowed the conversation to go any further. I was pleasantly surprised, despite my confidence, when I'm rolling it out and telling everybody, look, it's easy, the clients are there, all you've got to do is ask the question. It is true. Most clients will be receptive to it.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Okay, well, thanks for that, Rob. So if we move on then to sort of the practical steps then that you can take as an agent, things that you can get working on straight away. You can do these in the next 3 or 4 weeks. And Rob, Jeanette, Simon, please feel free to add on. This is me brainstorming. This is your area. But step one, identify the right roles. Have a think about where temp could work best. Generally, we see that in volume hiring. We see it across project-based work where there's a client needs short-term cover. I mean, Simon gave an example there a little bit earlier. And fast-moving roles. These tend to be the areas where we see that there's a problem that needs solving on the temp side. Would you agree, guys?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I think I'm not a recruitment trainer, and I'm probably talking to a lot of people with more recruitment experience than I've got. I'm going to say that identifying the right roles is just a qualifying exercise. It's understanding what's restricting your client currently. So if you have a perm client and they are, let's say you qualify the role as normal, you're not getting urgency, not getting the commitment to interview and things like that. It's getting underneath that and understanding why the clients are taking longer to come back to you, or things just aren't moving as quickly. Quite often the roles will come through that qualifying.
Yeah, that's important, and I think that really feeds into step two there. When we're talking about starting with your existing client base, building on those relationships, offering alternative solutions. Who's already using temps elsewhere in the market? What are your clients struggling with, as you mentioned there, Rob? What problems can you solve for them now, today? And mention again that you don't need new clients to start this. Work those existing relationships that you have.
Can you just go back one slide? Because I'll just give you one other example, which actually opened the door for me with my head. This was a time when we only had 3 staff, and I'm including myself as one. And we got the opportunity to pitch for some fire risk assessors to do a 6-month project with Lloyds Bank on behalf of Mighty, who were the FM company. And they wanted 16 fire risk assessors. They'd given the job to Hayes, who'd had it for a month, and they'd found one, and they needed 16. Anyway, they brought us in the last minute. We had 4 weeks to find them for this 6-month project, and we filled the other 15, and there was only 3 of us. So, and it was a game changer in my head for where I could take principal people. Where I was just running perm then, this was the one bit that got us doing some contract stroke temp work. And the good news about that is some of those fire risk assessors were so good, they became retained. They went perm. So we got another fee on the back of the 6-month project. But so we had 15 of the 16 out for 6 months on day rates, and it was fantastic. But and I only had 2 staff then. One of them was a resourcer who'd never done resourcing before. So you can do it. You can take a big project on with some energy even if you're small. And small companies are much more nimble, as we proved, than Hayes were, which was a real win for us. And it woke me up to the opportunity of small business over big business. So a lot of the people that might be on this call are solos or micro businesses, but guys and girls, you can do this definitely.
Yeah, that's a really good example. Thanks, Simon. Just showing that, when you are a bit smaller, you generally do tend to have that flexibility and to pivot quickly and offer those solutions out. So that's great to hear, Simon. Thank you. All right, so we've identified the roles and we've been talking about how you can work with your existing clients. So what's step 3? So now look at your candidates, look internally, look at those, and utilize that candidate database that you are sitting on an opportunity. Have a look at which candidates would be suitable for this desk. You might have some unplaced permanent candidates that are there that you haven't placed yet. You may have candidates between roles. Which of your candidates are open to contract work, and look to turn those into revenue. It's already there for you to work with.
To be honest, Dave, I'm going to say that is possibly the hardest part of the process of opening Temp up in it for your average perm business.
Mm-hmm.
The candidate base, whereas the client base is largely the same client base, and it might be that you need to run through the steps with the client in terms of how Temp would look because they've never done it before. That's more likely to be conversion. I actually think that there is a difference in a great candidate market, as in great for recruiters where there's lots of candidates. This isn't a problem. In a candidate market like today, I would suggest that there is probably going to be a slightly different candidate base. I'm not saying entirely different, and some people are going to take contract work is interims.
Mm-hmm.
But I think part of this process, if you're looking at Temp, is to actually build a candidate database of Temp workers as well.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. That's really useful insight. And I suppose you'd link that in then with this step and expand on that and look to build it out.
We mailed our 30,000 candidates on our database at a later stage and said, the market is changing, and this was are any of you interested in interim or contract or temp we don't know where you are. Some of those candidates we hadn't spoken to for years, which is dreadful recruitment, I know. But we probably got 50 or 60 that came back that said, I'd be really interested in some short-term projects. So you might have them there, but Rob's right. There are some temp workers that are always going to be temp. They love it, don't they? And
Yeah.
And perm some perm people get scared of temp or contract, and they want the security of perm. But there's a percentage out there that you don't know what's going on in their world. And if you've got a database of people, it's something to talk to them about and update the system. It's another reason to have a conversation. Yeah.
Real. Thanks, Simon. And then once you've worked through those steps, you then need to start thinking about how are you going to engage these workers? How are you going to pay them essentially? And broadly, there's three options for you to choose from. You can set up a PAYE function yourself. You might already have a PAYE function. Well, you wouldn't have a good first going into Temp, but you may want to do it in-house, but that brings challenges in itself. We'll touch on a few of those. This is where umbrellas step in. A good, compliant, reputable umbrella company can help you with that. You can essentially outsource that to an umbrella. And it's not just the payroll that umbrellas do. There's lots of other things that we can do for you as well. I think one of the biggest risk exposure areas you'd have by engaging workers yourself is, taking on some of that employment risk as well. So we'll talk to you a little bit about that. So PAYE umbrella, generally for inside IR35 roles, and if you're looking to place outside IR35 roles, then you've got limited companies as an option as well. But each of those has its pros and cons, and we'll go into that a little bit. Okay, step 5. So getting compliance right. There's a little bit to think about when you're placing temp workers, but it doesn't need to be stressful at all. But some of the things you'll start to be thinking about is worker status. We just touched on, just mentioned about IR35 there. What does the role look like? What's going to be the status of that worker when you place them? Do they need to be on a payroll? Can they operate through their own limited company? So have a think about that. Right to work checks, having a think about that. Again, if you're managing this in-house, then you're going to need to manage the right to work checks as well. If you work partner with an umbrella, that we would do that for you as the employer. mean, think a little bit about supply chain due diligence as well. Have a think about who you're working with. You'd already have done some of that, working with your clients and they in turn to you. But if you're going to add another partner into that supply chain, an umbrella company, then you'll need to have a little think about what is it you want to be looking for there, and to make sure you're partnering with the right supplier. We need to ensure candidates are paid correctly. So if you're managing that yourself, you need to have a think about how you're going to do that. Again, if you outsource to an umbrella, we manage that for you. And yeah, you don't need to do this alone. There's really good, compliant, reputable umbrellas out there that can help support you on this. Obviously, PayStream being one, but there are some really good providers out there.
I think, sorry, Dave, I think that's for me that is the biggest difference between perm and temp. I know we've talked about the practicalities of speaking to your clients and finding your candidates, but the legislation around temps is far greater than the legislation around perms. And if you're going to go into temps, then you really need to understand what it is you're getting into. Things like key information documents, the contracts with the clients are different. They will be different because you're going to be liable for certain things, and you want the client to be liable for certain things. There's a lot of clients that contracts we see through from clients where they want us to indemnify them from everything. And when you're working at a couple of pound an hour, if you're lucky, you really don't want to be indemnifying them for damaging a forklift truck sort of thing. So you really need to get your head around that. And as you say, there are people that you can go to ask for support. Team have got great advisors. And you've got model contracts as well, I think, Simon, haven't you?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have, and we've got some new ones coming very, very soon. We've
Yeah.
got a
Because the
some
penalties of getting it wrong, they can be quite drastic. If you think about right to work when you're doing perms, you've got no responsibility for right to work. When you're doing temps, you're completely responsible for right to work, and if you get it wrong, it's 45 grand for the first temp, and then it's 60 grand thereafter. So you don't need to get it wrong on many of them for it to be a significant fine. Not wanting to put anybody off, because I still think it's one of the good things you should do, but you just need to make sure you go in with your eyes wide open because it is completely different.
And I think you're right. Yeah, and I would want if I was going this again, I want the right partners to advise me. I don't want to, and as a small business owner, I don't want to do it myself. I see, I want someone else who does it for thousands of people all the time with and they've got bulletproof systems to do all that for me, which is why I invited Dave to come on and present here. So and other Daves are available, as are PayStreams. But that's why I think you need to, eyes wide open is really good,
Yeah.
but choose your right partners. And Dave mentioned the supply chain can sort this out. But I think there are some risks there, but benefits too. And you said, Dave, didn't
Massive.
you, at the beginning,
Yeah.
measure the risks, look at the risks
Uh-huh.
and where they are, and why umbrellas exist. And we've got we've got new rules and regs with the Employment Act, and Kerry Greenland said, has the change to workers' rights impacted this at all or made it harder to navigate? Yeah, Jeanette, you might be the best to answer that from a
Um,
user point of view.
has the workers right? I think the answer's got to be yes, hasn't it? It's made it harder and made it harder to navigate. The one that's in at the moment is SSP. So is the employer or the engager, you liable for SSP from day one now rather than day 3 or day 4? And the big ones we're waiting to hear on, things like guaranteed hours, penalties for short notice, curtailment of shifts. Um, but I think there's also opportunities in there because it's not just, unlike AWR, it's not just against the recruitment industry, it's against every employer in the UK. And a lot of the clients will be looking, I think, to their recruitment partners for advice. And
Yeah,
things like try before you buy, that with the 6-month unfair dismissal change that's coming in from July this year rather than January next year. a lot of clients, I think, will want to take the people temp before they take them perm, just to make sure that they
Yeah.
do fit the model that they for their culture and what have you.
Great opportunity for temp revenue and then perm revenue thereafter. So make sure your T's and C's are right for transfer
Yeah,
of that. Yeah, I think that you've hit a great opportunity on the head for that, and that's something to have conversations with clients now, isn't it? Because you rightly said, although the rule is coming in January, it sort of clicks in from July. Because if you take someone on between July and Christmas, they will fall into the 6 month rule, not the 2 year rule. Yeah,
yeah.
good
The other
point.
one that's coming as well, which should really mention, is a joint and several liability. So
Yeah,
if you do use an umbrella company, you really do need to partner with someone you trust and know that they're doing the right thing, because if they don't pay the tax on time, then HMRC can come after you as the agency within that chain.
correct.
And that's created quite a lot of extra admin for people to make sure that the umbrella that they've got in the chain is doing things properly. Because that, it's a real change. It's a game changer, really.
One of the
Um,
biggest changes in employment law, isn't it? And, to
yeah,
affect the industry.
yeah, and yeah, we could go on all day if we start talking about that one, I think.
That's why I was glad to get PayStream on board, because there's I mean, you're the biggest by double, aren't you, Dave? And if we and that there's a lot of security in that, with the value and the established position that you're in, gives comfort to a lot of smaller businesses to know that you can support, you're supporting some huge businesses, but also, you quite rightfully said at lots of our meetings, you've got solo recruiters with one or two temps that you
Yeah.
support as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we literally work right across the scale. Like, at the top end, we're working with most, if not all of the top 100 largest recruiters in the country. But then we've got lots of solos and sort of micro agencies that we're working with as well. So it's quite a broad spectrum, to be honest.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, you all touched on lots of key points there, and
Okay.
we'd need another 3 webinars, to talk about all the
Okay.
things that have been going on in this
Yeah.
Could I
space recently.
could I throw my flippant recruiter's hat into this ring? Jeanette will absolutely adore this. Kerry, the thing is just to get someone in place that is going to worry about this for you, and whether that's PayStream or whoever else. The challenges of recruitment outweigh the challenges of the legislation that comes through, in my opinion. So I think if you cracked recruitment, somebody can look after this, and they will do, which is what Jeanette does for me, or at least our team does. I think there's more opportunity than there is negative to it. I'm sat in our board meetings quite unfazed by it all, Jeanette. I think that's possibly because I have an element of self-employed temporary work as well,
Cool.
in the sector I work in. But
No, I think
Well,
that's it. I think that's really key. I think, well, we've got a point on this side about that, about how, a good umbrella can help protect you from the risk. In light of joint and several liability and the Employment Rights Act and all the things we've just mentioned, I've never been on the phone as much as I have been on video calls, on webinars, on face-to-face client visits than I have in the last 6 months. And joint and several liability in itself is a huge change in our industry. But when you couple that with the Employment Rights Act, and I mean, that is the biggest shake-up in employment rights in a generation. That in itself is a mammoth thing to be looking at. So you really need to ensure you're partnering with an umbrella that understands it, lives and breathes it every single day, has got tried and tested processes, has been doing it for years, is financially stable. There are umbrellas out there that do this and can help you with this. And I suppose that moves us quite nicely onto, where do recruiters go wrong typically? What's the common mistakes that we see? I've had lots of conversations with agencies that have maybe not chose the right umbrella partner, but in light of joint and several liability, and I'll outline what that is briefly in a second, it's really, really important that you get that right now, because, there is a tax liability that if it's not not paid, it can move through the chain. And Jeanette sort of mentioned that in a nutshell. That is what JSL really is in its most simplified form. If the umbrella doesn't pay the correct amount of tax over to HMRC, then HMRC can turn to the agency and come after the agency for any unpaid amount. So it's really, really important that you're working with a reputable supplier that's been doing it for a number of years. They're compliant, they're FTSA accredited. They maybe work with SafeRec. We work with SafeRec now. SafeRec is a payslip auditor. It has a look at every single payslip that we run every single day. It runs checks on that to make sure all of the tax amounts have been correctly allocated, that they've been paid to HMRC. There's tools out there that can help support you with that, sort of outside of your umbrella partner as well. But yeah, you don't want to get that wrong. And I suppose really the key thing is, you want to be working with an umbrella provider that's financially stable. There's got a good trading history. Have a look at the umbrella's accounts, have a look, credit check them regularly. That's some simple due diligence you can be carrying out to make sure that you are partnering with the right partner. But as Rob mentioned, there is a lot to think about in terms of the legislation and steps that you need to comply with. But if you're working with the right partners, they can remove that headache for you, because we do it every single day. So we can help you on that. So yeah, JSL, just a quick sort of note, what do you need to know? This is in its sort of most simplified version, but this is essentially what it is. So that tax liability will sit across the supply chain. It affects what's called relevant parties under the legislation. But what that typically looks like, if you look at the most common supply chain scenario, you have an end client, you have an agency, and you have an umbrella. The liability will always sit, every transaction or any unpaid amount, it'll always sit with the umbrella. So the umbrella is always liable, and then it'll always sit with the party closest to the end client. So in that typical scenario, that would be the umbrella and it would be the agency. If you are working with a managed service provider and they're also in the supply chain, because they are the closest party to the end client in that supply chain, so end client, MSP, recruitment agency, umbrella, the liability will sit with the umbrella and the MSP. It doesn't sit with the agency in that scenario. And there's various other supply chain scenarios, but they're the most common ones. So it's really important, as we've mentioned, that you make sure you're partnering with the right suppliers, and that you carry out the relevant due diligence. We've touched on a few of those bits that you can work on, and be careful of cheap solutions, because we're starting to see actually them sort of falling away from the market because of JSL. But typically or historically, what's happened where you've had umbrellas that maybe aren't behaving in a compliant manner and they offer these cheap solutions, they will carry hidden risk, because if they do fold or they're not paying over the correct amounts, then that liability is going to sit with you. So it is really important that you are looking for and partnering with reputable suppliers. And sort of summed it up at the end there. The key is to partner with a compliant, financially strong and stable umbrella partner. Okay, so we move back into our practical steps of what you can be doing in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So step 6, have a little think about pricing and margin. Temp does work differently to perm. So it's smaller margins per candidate, but obviously it is recurring revenue. You can build this out at scale. You can place one contractor, you place 5, 10, 100, whatnot, and obviously that as that scale increases, so does your profitability, and that consistent revenue. That can beat one-off fees, and I think probably Rob and Jeanette, you'll be able to talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, just on that, Dave, and going back to your slide about where recruiters get it wrong. I know firsthand, and I was guilty of this as a consultant. There's always a risk, and there'll be a tendency for you to devalue one side or the other. So if you're a perm recruiter or you're a perm business, and then you do some temp business, you're probably going to undervalue your temp business and do it cheap because your client gives you some perm margin. Flipping that for what I've experienced, we have relatively, we may have a client that will spend £1 million with us on temp, expecting a discount. on the perm fee. There is no need to do it. If you'd have asked me a few years ago, I'd have been saying, yeah, we can do that 10%, it's fine. Just the mindset shift of it's a different service you're getting, it's an additional. If you have some sort of volume discount in place, then it can just form part of that. But be really strong on your pricing as a separate product and a separate service.
One of the things that woke me up to the opportunity in Temp is principal people were getting taken over by the Danish group, as some of you know, the Euler group, and we were working an earn-out, and I had a role for 18 months as COO for the group, as well as running principal people in the earn-out. And they wanted me to buy some more businesses in the UK. So I came across a little company in Newcastle that were doing education temps, and had 4 staff, very small business but profitable. And the owner wanted to get out, and wasn't involved. He was doing the back office, and the guy that was doing all the hard work looked at his numbers, and he said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "What margin do you make on your temps?" It was all temp in education and support teachers when people were off ill and etc. And also for whole terms as well, and maternity. He said 31% we make. I said you can't be making that. He said no, 31%. He's now got 30. If we move on, that's the date, 7 years after he's got 30 staff now. So he built that from 4 to 30 and still hitting 31%. So it depends on the market. If there's demand there, and in education, it's a great opportunity. So he was showing, all I ever made on our contract or short-term projects was 21%, but he was making 31. Astonishing. So yeah, you don't have to do it cheap. Depending on your market, understand your market well, and the demand can drive the price.
You're absolutely right. It's about knowing your market, isn't it? The other thing I was saying on pricing and margin is the cost of funds. So whether you're a lot of perm agencies that do temp fund it themselves.
Yeah.
If you've not got the funds to be able to do that, especially with the current climate, then you'll be looking to factor or invoice discount. And when you're paying the wages, it's going to take you 7 to 30 days to get paid by the client. You've got to factor in the cost of funds, and the higher the pay rate, the more the cost of funds that you're using. So you should be going for higher margins, and it is sector specific. I don't think they're getting 30% in education anymore, Simon. But they're still getting more than they would do for an industrial temp.
Yeah, definitely.
In all honesty, if you maintained the percentage that you were comfortable with, you wouldn't be a million miles away with temp. You're right, Jeanette, there's more cost. Yeah. But if your average perm fees are coming at 15%, if you rolled that out into your temp margin, you're probably not a million miles away. That wouldn't stop you from having those bigger margins when you can get them. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't stop you playing around and being creative with fee structures that enable them to take margin off a perm fee at the end of it. So actually what you get is a perm fee with some temp margin along the way. There's loads you can do, but it's just that value in what you're doing is a additional service, not as a free or discounted service.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, that's really great insight. Thanks, everyone. And then we move on to the final step. How does it work operationally? In a nutshell, the basics you need to be thinking about: timesheets. Your temp candidates are going to need to be producing timesheets so your client and you as a recruiter can understand what needs paying. The umbrella needs to understand what needs to be paid. Have a think about that weekly, monthly payroll. Again, you've got the 2 options. You've got your PAYE option if you wanted to do it in-house, but you've got the umbrella if you want to outsource it. You need to think about how you're going to be invoicing the clients and how that process is going to work, how you're going to manage contractors. I'm sure Rob and Jeanette will talk a little bit about what's different on the permanent and the temporary side as a recruiter. But this is where an umbrella can help. We can help with a lot of those things as well. So we make it as easy as we can for you. But yeah, maybe Rob, Jeanette, one of you maybe want to pick up on the sort of the ops side. Maybe Rob.
Thanks,
That's up to you. Yeah.
Basics. Managing contracts is an interesting one. One of the sort of hidden benefits of this in terms of your client relationship is in the way that a perm consultant will do regular check-ins post-placement, or at least they should do, and we train that out. A good temp consultant or someone running a temp business is doing the same with their contractors. So you're inevitably going to speak to your contractor every week. If it gets to a point where all you get is an email of a timesheet, I would start to worry. So in terms of managing those temps, it's a chance to get in front of the client. Even if you're going and you're only going to take some biscuits, if you want to go and see that temp every month to check in, or that group of temps to see how they are, taking some biscuits, that's something that really helps us, to be honest, getting in front of clients. So we're picking up perm vacancies because we're in front of clients so often. How else it work? It can be something to bear in mind is this is going to work better in some sectors than others. I believe that if you're on your own doing this as a single person business, or you have limited staff, there are some sectors where this is going to work much better. High volume blue collar temp alongside slower paced perm is challenging. So ideally, you're going to be looking at temporary workers that fit in with a white collar or at least a slower paced. Because the management there's more contact points, there's more admin to do because you're doing weekly payroll. If you're doing that for 50 temps to return a low margin, that's really challenging to then manage a perm desk alongside it. What's working really well for us is some white collar temps. So I've got a consultant that's doing a dual desk, and then we'll have a consultant working a region on blue collar temp and on blue collar perm.
I'd also look at the software you're using. If you're just going into temp, you're probably not going to have any software, but you're going to need some sort of software to do the payroll if you're going to do that yourself, or even send the information over to an umbrella company. And there's specialist recruitment software out there that will manage the invoice and the timesheet at the same time, rather than inputting the hours more than once. But it depends on how many temps you're looking at, and whether you can be mithered really. If you've got handful of temps, you can probably manage it on a spreadsheet and then send the information off to a partner. But the invoicing, you'd need to do that yourself, I think. So you just need to make sure you've got the ability to do that.
Yeah, I think you can. Spreadsheets get you going, but the tech makes it so much easier, and we
Yeah.
got lots of partners that can support that. We've got specialist, temp partners that have run some great systems that are easy to use. So
just on that previous slide, sorry, as well. So something that I've not seen on the slides yet is a credit limit. So an insured credit limit with your client base that you're trading with that maybe you're not as concerned about with perms, because theoretically you've not got credit, you've got debt, if that makes sense. So I think that's another consideration, is to make sure that you are in a position to be able to get insured credit limits on those clients, because there's risk of lost money rather than lost fees.
Yeah, if you factor, most of the factoring companies will include the insurance. But if you're funding it yourself, or you're going with a factor, like, say, I think NatWest pulled out of the insured market, didn't they, a while back? If you go into one of the high street banks, then you're probably not going to have insurance, and that's a valid point Rob's raised, because with perms, the only thing you're going to lose if they don't pay that invoice is your time, or the consultant's time having found that candidate, and maybe some advertising to get the candidate to put forward. With temps, you're going to lose the wages that you paid out every week, as well as your time and the cost of advertising, etc. And I think sometimes it looks a bit too good to be true. We've been caught by a scammer in the past. I think we got caught, was it about 80k, Rob? It was one of Built Environments years ago. scaffolding
before my time,
company.
you know.
I think you were around, you probably weren't in charge, but it was a scaffolding company and they'd come to us before Christmas and they'd been in touch, they'd found us on the web or somebody had recommended us, I can't remember. And the consultant thought it was great. They were basically giving us about 20 scaffolders
Mm.
to payroll, dead cert, carrot was dangled. Got to Christmas, first payment was due, but it was Christmas, so no money came out. Before we realised it was a problem, it was mid-Jan, and they were bumping up against the credit limit we'd got. And then we realised it was a scam. So you've got to be really careful.
Yeah.
It was a clever one. They did
It
about
was a
four
clever one.
agencies in the same year, so it was a legitimate limited company. It traded for long enough to get a limit in place and look good on paper, and then they fast tracked the fraud over the space of a few months. Scaffolders and thermal insulation people are best avoided for that.
Yeah.
They're not big hurdles though. I think there's a because we've seen it so much, Jeanette. We will probably do all of the doom and gloom, and actually these are exceptions, not the rule. And
No, I agree. I
yeah,
agree. Out of all the thousands of clients we've had over the years, there's probably been
yeah.
a couple, hasn't there? It's just something to watch out for. But if you're starting small with your existing clients, it's highly unlikely that's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Um,
Can we move on to Meridian's case study? Come on. Yeah.
Yes.
Ah.
Here we go. Yeah, I'll hand over to you two.
Is it? Do you know?
no,
Do you
no,
want to
Robbie,
do?
you can go. Yeah, I think I've spoken enough.
Wow. Right. Well, this is a slightly flipped version of it, Dave, because as I've mentioned, certainly my experience of this is actually having a temp business and then building perm side by side. What I was hoping to do when you asked us to support was go away and come back with a great single case study that demonstrate hundreds of thousands of pounds of unknown margin. But then I thought I should actually tell the truth, given that we're all very transparent in the team network. What I have rather than a single case study, so I mentioned it very briefly earlier. In the last, I'll round up to 8 months. There are 8 clients now that we're trading with that we've traded both temp and perm in that last 8 months. And they're not staggering numbers. I suspect my part of Meridian is similar to a lot of the team businesses in terms of turnover and margin. But we've got 50, 60k of perm through and 30k of temp off those accounts. That temp margin is still running. But there are accounts there that we were targeting for temp for a long time, had an opportunity to supply perm, was successful in that. That then led to temp margin within the space of a month. Wow. So something that we've targeted for 2 or 3 years, that one avenue in. So I think in terms of new client generation, it's a great tool as well as your existing client base. In terms of perm accounts that then gave us some temp. So there's a client on the board right now we've got our first temp booking on. We did a perm into them last year for 7k, and they've just given us a temp booking through. I can't give you. What I've not done is given you a full case study with loads of detail because it just doesn't. I've not. Yeah, I haven't got a single one example for you. There's multiple. We've got another account actually who we've been supplying. We've done 2 perms with them. It's a client based in South Wales. We were knocking on the door for temp for 2 years. We got the perm over the line in November last year. We've got another perm going through next week, and we've got the first temp bookings on the board. That will be a more sizable one. That's 20 or 30 temps at peak. So that I guess is the best example of it. I think I've already mentioned. Go on, sorry.
Sorry, Rob. I think what you've demonstrated is that it works. It's just different. It's just a different animal, isn't it? That's all it is. It's some things are similar. It's a bit like a cat, I suppose, isn't it? Different size cats. There's some similarities between perm and temp, but there's some major differences.
Yeah,
You've just got to understand what those differences are and be prepared for them, or know where to go to get the answers.
yeah.
You know,
There's loads of
it
benefits along the
works.
way. One of the things you get with Temp, because it's faster paced from a consultant perspective. So if you're managing consultants, so let alone your own sanity, but there's the same buzz from a Temp start as there is with a perm start. And actually, from a motivational point of view, there's something to be said for having the consistency of Temp wins coming through and starts coming through. It really keeps momentum going, particularly in a market like it is now. If you're reliant on perm and you do have the off on months, which everyone's going to have right now, it's not that it dilutes it financially, or just that it dilutes it financially, but everybody's still got something that they can win. There's still a prize in it, so you're still going for it. I think I've mentioned about the pricing and being rigid on that, and I would just be clear on markets that are worth going after with this, because it can be a distraction. But I think that if I was starting again, it's minimizing the distraction. So just being clear on what you're doing and when you're doing it and why you're doing it and who's going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
High volume, really high volume Temp alongside perm is going to be a challenge if you are only one or two people. So I guess it's picking that Temp business that suits.
Yeah, I think that. Thank you. I wasn't necessarily just looking for a one case study, so that's fine. I think listening to you guys that are doing this every day, I think that's really useful insight. So thank you for sharing that. I'm very conscious of time, so we are just at 2 o'clock. So just a quick summary: your first 30 days. This is what it looks like. Week 1 and 2, identify 10 of your clients that you're currently working with and map what opportunities there may be there. We'll share these slides after as well, so you can have a think about that. And obviously we'll share the recording. Weeks 2 to 3 look to re-engage candidates, and weeks 3 to 4 set up a model and start talking to partners. I'm sure my email address, if you want to speak to me, is david.johnson@paystream.com. But have a think about that. You've got some steps that you can take in the first 3 to 4 weeks. And just to summarize, quick key takeaways: Temp, it's recurring revenue. If your perm revenue is challenging at the moment, it just gives you that alternative revenue stream. You've already got the foundations to get this off the ground. It doesn't need to be complex. If you're partnering with the right people, it can be managed very easily for you, and you can be supported. You just got to get there. You just got to make sure you choose the right partner. Yeah, you don't need to be an expert. Just make sure you're partnering with the right suppliers.
Would anyone like to ask? That we are out of time, but there are a couple of questions in the chat. If Kerry, you're still there, please feel free to unmute everyone. You can ask them. Go on, fire away.
I think the question, Kerry, that you've asked that I don't think we've answered up to now is if it's straight PAYE, is a liability the same? I assume you mean a joint and several with umbrellas. It absolutely is. It's across the board, whether they're doing a funny scheme or they're not. I think HMRC just got fed up with trying to deal with umbrellas that are pushing through what they would class as illegal schemes, and they've just done a broad brush across the whole industry. And I believe that NICs and apprenticeship levy is also coming into the mix, Dave. But at the moment, it's just PAYE.
Yeah, no, that is included. And there's lots of levers HMRC can pull now. They've identified that there's areas where there's non-compliance. For years, they've been coming up with different ways of addressing that. ITPA 2003, that piece of legislation that governs tax, that keeps expanding, and we're up to Chapter 11 now with joint and several liability. So, HMRC have these levers, but what we are starting to see, sort of, especially in light of JSL, we are starting to see a consolidation of the market in terms of those reputable suppliers. A lot of these suppliers that haven't been doing things compliant, we're starting to see them fall away. But as long as if you're working with and looking for reputable umbrellas that have been around for a few years, are FCSA accredited, work with SafeRep, financially sound, you're on the right path.
How can you check that a company is not a scam? as you mentioned, the issue you have with the scaffolding company, what are the red flags? That, I think that's a good one.
It's really difficult. We did all the checks with this particular company. We did all the checks. We've got a credit limit in place. The reason we realised it was a scam was because we went back to the credit insurance company and asked for an increased limit, and we just happened to have the insurance company in for a meeting, and the guy said, "I think it's got some red flags," and the red flags for them were that the company had been set up, but it hadn't been going very long, and it had millions in the net worth. It had kind of appeared from nowhere. I think we'd done all the checks on the temps. We'd we'd done the checks on the directs. It was really difficult. I think having the relationship, I would say, if it comes out of nowhere, if you haven't got a relationship, if they're giving you the temps, if it looks too good to be true, then it probably is, and you might want to do a little bit more digging. But we got caught, and I think we're pretty good on our credit control and procedures that we've got.
They were.
So,
It was clever. It was clever.
yeah,
The temps were all legitimate people that could prove the right to work. So we, on paper, we were paying wages properly to people. So it wasn't. It really was clever. Subsequently, there's probably been 2 or 3 that I'm aware of, Jeanette, that I've had that spotted straight away on the basis of, oh, you want me to payroll 25 people next week?
Yeah, I know in the past, Jeanette, and you've been tough with some of your clients and some big brands as well, and they've asked you to take on some contracts, and you've asked for upfront payment, haven't you?
yeah,
For projects like that. So that sorts the scammers out, doesn't it? If you don't know them from Adam, they come to you with a big project. All of a sudden, what happened to the last supplier? That's when you can say, we can do this, but for the first month or so, we want an upfront payment. And
and it might not be it's a scammer. It might be that they're struggling with credit and their existing agencies decided not to supply anymore.
Yeah.
I think it does come back to that. If it looks too good to be true, it probably is. I don't know if there's any more questions, Sam, but I think
we're running out of time, aren't we?
Yeah, my final point would be keep it simple. If you've not done temps before, keep it simple. Stay with PAYE. Get the booking because there's always someone who can help you out with it, and make sure you've got a list of partners you can go to get the funding.
Perfect. Good.
But I would just keep it simple.
Excellent. Well, thank you, David. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Jeanette. What a great session. This will be on the hub for a rewatch. And Dave, if you can send me the slides, I'll make sure everyone, what we'll do is we'll attach those to the session as well so that people can download those. And I'll make sure they've got your contact details on those slides at the end if they want some more advice. And Jeanette and Rob, thank you for telling us how it is and having run it so successfully for many years. Really helpful. Great to have you back. All the best, folks. Many thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Thanks, Simon. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.